It's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, I have one of my PRTist friends all the way from South Africa, Joburg to be exact. I have Nelisa Ngqulana, and she is the owner, founder of PR Trends ZA. Nelisa, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Kellen, thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm so excited to be able to talk about all things PR. And a lot of folks have questions because people don't always know, what's PR, what's not PR. But then when you talk about doing it internationally, people always think there's going to be some other like written rules, or if there are different ways of doing business, it's being able to adapt. So I'm happy to have you on here just to have a conversation about what PR is and where it's going.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here having this conversation. And it's true. There's a lot of there are a lot of changes happening within the space, within the sector. I mean, just from a technology perspective, technology is changing how we do business a lot, and the practice of PR. But finding ourselves in this pandemic has definitely added a new dimension to how we work.
Yes, yes. And how has PR been impacted in South Africa? Because here, PR sometimes, if people like lose a client or lose a budget, PR from government to corporate can be the first thing they cut. Tesla is an example of that. Tesla canceled their PR department in America. So how has it impacted you in South Africa?
So for us, it's been, from the working with business and technology, there's been kind of an increase in activity from that side. It's also been a really, really great tool right now for government to use around information on the pandemic, making sure that people have access to information in a language that they can access. And also because we've got so many different audience segments, right? So we've got people in very rural, deep rural areas. It's been important that PR people are involved in creating custom messages for all these different groups. So I think for us, it's been on the rise. And also one other dimension that where it's been on the rise is around in the political arena. There's been a lot of conversation around corruption, a lot of people, getting arrested lately, a lot of embattled politicians who are trying to kind of sanitize their images in the media. So there's been quite a lot of different activity for PR people, during this time.
Okay. And I mean, it's a difficult time, around the world for everybody's having to adjust. But Africa has not been hit like we have been hit. I mean, for the whole continent, we double and triple the amount of deaths for our one country. So, are people even, wearing masks out there? Is it mandated? I know the lockdown was something serious, especially in
Yeah.
the townships. I mean, give us kind of a glimpse of what it looks like in South Africa.
So we've been through 5 levels of lockdown. In the beginning, it was really like a hard lockdown where there was very minimal activity in terms of people not being able to go to work. Shopping hours were limited. There was no church. The way we conduct our funerals and gatherings, that was like severely limited. We had a curfew, so only for essential work. If you weren't an essential worker, you had to have a very good explanation as to why you were outside of certain times. Like even like delivery services were limited. I know where I live, in the complex that I live in, we had restrictions on visitors. So you couldn't have visitors coming in to see you. Deliveries, you still have to pick them up at the security point. So it was quite hectic in that way, which also then meant that a lot of people were online a lot, trying to kind of make that transition. A lot of businesses suffered because a lot of physical like events were canceled. A lot of conferences were canceled. A lot of offices had to close down because people were now working from home. So there was quite a huge a thing around that. Also, our famous alcohol ban happened during that time. Alcohol and cigarettes were banned during that time. So it was an interesting time to see how those brands managed to keep themselves alive during this time. So there were a lot of changes in that way. People are respecting the masks. I mean, we're wearing masks everywhere, even though now the economy has opened up a bit. We've moved from level 5 in March to now in November, we are on level 1, which literally means that the economy is opened. Certain country people can now even fly internally within the country and also outside into the continent. So there is some little bit of movement. We are going out. People are hosting parties, but also people are also hosting a lot of illegal gatherings still. Recently, our South African Police Service closed down a couple of illegal clubs because even though the curfew has been extended, people still want to be out till later than the curfew. The curfew is up until midnight, but people are still wanting to party until, the sun comes up. So the police, they're keeping the police busy in that way. But everywhere you go, it's a mask. You have to sanitize when you come into the mall, when you come into a restaurant, any establishment. They're required by law to have masks and sanitizers on entry. Even our courts have changed a little bit. A lot of virtual hearings that are happening. Our parliament is still working virtually, kind of like on low capacity physical meetings. So yeah, so we're still kind of wary of a second wave because our infection rate hasn't gone down completely.
Okay. And all this negative, I personally, we've seen an increase in business. More businesses have needed our help. We just don't do PR. We do consulting as well. And we're quite technical over here, so we like to solve problems. But have you been able to capitalize and say, you know what? One, I can go up on my price now because I'm so sought after, and have the government reached out to you because there's a different message every day, and nobody was really ready for this.
Yeah, so from our side, one of the ways, immediate ways we were able to capitalize on it was to encourage clients to still host events virtually. So which meant that we could still, host events and do PR around those events, especially events that are related to COVID, etc. And yes, so we've also worked with a lot of nonprofits to try and create messages. And also, we are crisis communicators. So this was like a perfect, ideal time for us. One area is obviously the nonprofits that we worked with, the UN agencies in South Africa. We're doing a lot of work with the South African National AIDS Council. So so we built some new brands during this time. So you can just imagine the amount of work that went into that. And thirdly, a lot of businesses who were not relying on their digital presence before now had to kind of put more emphasis on making sure they are standing out above their competitors, because the only way customers could find them was online. So there was a lot of work on that end, trying to help customers launch new products. A lot of clients didn't even have e-commerce before. So a lot of people were launching new products during this time. So it's been busy on those three fronts, if I can summarize it.
Okay, awesome. I love to hear that you have been able to, it's another level, and people actually get to see why they need thinkers like us, which I think a lot of times, people say, oh, that's extra until you have a crisis. You need somebody who can, help you with that. Now, for the folks who are, inspiring to get into PR, can you give, some ranges? I love talking money because a lot of times I find we give ourselves a valuation in what we say we want, and it's very low. And sometimes clients will only say, I only have this. You may love the client, you may love the project, but the price is the price, so you can be able to pay for things. And can you talk about the money aspect on how that works for you, how you onboard a client, what ranges you have? So somebody right now listening, thinking about taking $100 for our end, we actually have people who will say, oh, I'm going to do it for $100. And it's like, huh? Then they say, I'm going to do it for $500. And I know currency, the valuation, it's different, because for $100, what I can buy in South Africa is different than what I can buy here, but that's still a low amount of money for the time that's put in. So can you educate the audience on, in South Africa, what these prices in rand, we don't have to talk dollars, in rand, even if they want to reach out to you, how much they should be looking at spending per month?
So we have some guidelines with the South African Freelancers Association. So they give some guidelines around how a person can start pricing. So you'll get, on average, for an experienced PR consultant, you can expect to pay anything between 850 Rand an hour upwards for your hourly rate. So that can easily work out to what, per month on retainer, you probably, for minimal, like 2 or 3 placements a month, you're probably looking at about 15,000 a month. So depending on obviously the experience of the consultant, some people do it for much less. And also depending on the kind of turnaround people want, because some people will say, they want everything now to happen quickly, or they call, for us in crisis, people will call over a weekend or expect you to do work on a Sunday. That means obviously then the rate would double because of the nature of the crisis, and also some of the additional work that might need to be done. So for some crisis situations, you need to gather certain experts outside of PR who will work. For example, some clients might need legal as well. They might need forensic investigators sometimes. So there are all those external costs that they need to consider. But yeah, from a very kind of like mid-level, you're looking at about 850 an hour.
Okay, no, that's good. And I did, you said 15,000 Rand a month, so that's about $949. I'm glad I know that, because when we are allowed to come into South Africa, I've had to reschedule one trip. Now it looks like our trip to February, possibly, South Africa may or may not let us in. We're gonna see, but when we come, I definitely.
The US, no way, we can't. You're coming from a hotspot.
Look, you said you don't even want us. Say, stay home.
Look, if we can connect like this online, let's keep it here.
Yeah, no, I agree. My wife would agree with you too because she sees it in the hospital. Like, people here think it's a hoax, but she's like, they need to come work at the hospital for one day. But yeah, so it looks like we're gonna have to reschedule. But when we do go, I will definitely be hitting you up saying, look, this is what we want to do. We want to have a client go on TV and
You have to. You have to.
yeah. So, so, you know, were you a trained journalist or was PR something you kind of stumbled?
So, in university, my undergrad, I studied international relations in media with an interest in TV news production. And I went on to my first entry into work was actually working for magazines, business publications. So I was writing and researching for magazines, freelancing for lifestyle publications, women's magazines, etc. My main interest was really just writing and creating content at the time. I did not realize that I could go into like a whole career in PR because when I was in university, PR was not seen as, a kind of like a serious business area of business that you could go into. So I worked for magazines for about 2-3 years straight out of varsity. And while I was in between jobs, I was listed with a recruiting agency, and they gave me an assignment at a PR agency. The assignment was supposed to have been for 3 months. I started there as a junior account exec, and that was my first taste in PR, and was mostly corporate clients and some government departments that we worked with there. And while I was there, I then this whole world of public relations opened up for me. But I've always been a student of journalism. Even while I was working in PR, I've continued to study journalism. So I moved from the PR agency to corporate. So I worked in healthcare, private healthcare, administrators, companies who build technology to manage medical insurance. So that was a whole other world that also introduced me to technology, communications, and obviously a little bit more PR. Yes, and then I spent about 10 years in corporate. And then I worked for a trade union. After the trade union, I really needed a break from PR, and I took a short break. But you can never really leave PR. And then I started consulting on my own, and I've been consulting on my own for about 7 years now.
Awesome. So you too do PR and consulting for your company.
Biggest area of focus is around our biggest area for companies usually come to us when they need strategy around whether it is launching a product, whether it is wanting to position, whether it is wanting to rebrand, or whether it is wanting to build a crisis communication, or just being a little bit more proactive around how they position themselves in the market. So we will do that. And we also do PR campaigns where we obviously just basically try and get people media coverage.
Okay. And I asked that because I got into the consulting piece, many moons ago, because one of my team members said that's outside of the scope of PR. You're more consulting than anything for this particular client. And I always, and tell me if you agree, I don't think a public relations firm can do the client, I can't just put you on TV. There's some type of consulting or strategy we have to put in play that is going to go above just PR and above the onboarding, because you could get a client on, 30 placements in a month. It doesn't necessarily move the needle for the client. It doesn't mean they're going to sell more books, but you have to explain so much to them that somehow goes into their marketing. And if they don't know anything about that, now I'm spending time teaching you about marketing and advertising. So would you agree that every PR agency and firm, you know, should, you know, consider themselves consultants? Because it probably was 7 years where I'm just like, oh, I do PR. That's all I do. And I'm almost 20 years
No.
in.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's impossible to say, it's impossible to just say, I'm going to get you placements. The first place I always start is, where's your business going? How does this fit into your business so that there is a clear strategy in place? I always decline projects where people insist on, we just want media coverage, where I don't understand how this makes a difference in the business in the long run. I mean, I try as hard as possible to tie the PR effort to the bottom line, because I think we've had a very bad reputation around, people saying, we don't understand the return on investment. How does this fit into the business? So to draw a very clear line between, what the PR strategy should be and how it links to the business's actual goals, so that at the end of the day, you're able to say, this is what we wanted to achieve, versus what the outcome is at the end. Because like you say, you can get people 30 placements in a month. It doesn't mean anything if it's not linked to a strategy.
Okay. And what about, you have your PR company. A lot of times clients will come and, for what they want, you'll have to give them a much higher invoice as you spoke about, higher than, 15,000 Rand. And they say, I don't have it. Have you been able to acquire any businesses or have any partnerships with companies that you really, like, and you say, look, I could do this for a discount, but I'm going to take a part of your business? And I ask you that because most public relations specialists are so multifaceted that they have another business on the side or other interests that make them money. So share all of that. If,
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I do one of two things. So based on, I'll give you what you can afford, right? So if we're saying minimum 15,000 will get you a couple of placements, and you have less than that, that means you'll get less placements then, if that's what you can afford. So, and also obviously it would make other recommendations around ways of PRing a business based on what they have. Sometimes if you don't have that amount of money, maybe we should focus on social media, because then on social media we can help you to build a presence and through that attract media attention, right? So which means you're building from a bit of a lower base, but we can get you there because we know we've got those contacts via social media. So we've been very successful with trying like different creative ways of making that happen. And yes, on the other hand, we have had situations where a client really has an amazing product or a service, and at the time they can't afford to pay the full amount. We either obviously go on a profit share or equity in the other business. And sometimes it's only for a certain period of time to make sure that we can recoup our investment as well into the business. So yes, you as you rightly put it, we often as PR people are very restless beings with lots of interests in different things.
and has any of those companies, I'm being a little nosy and asking this, but have any of those companies, really hit off where you're like, you know what? Maybe there's a royalty check that comes in every month, and you're like, if I ever wanted to take a month off, I wouldn't even have to think twice about it. Or that was such a great choice that I made to work with this person because a lot of times, you want to say no because you don't have the money. And a lot of folks have told people no, where then they become like Tesla, they become like Uber. And, folks are like, only if I would have got in at the start. So have any of those companies, really hit it off?
There is one that has hit it off, but I don't think I can just drop work immediately at the moment. But there is one that is growing nicely.
Well, let's be a little more nosy and tell me, what this company was. I must know. I need to know, like Anthony.
I'm not able to speak about it at this point in time, but trust, there is one out there that's doing really well.
Okay, so she's gonna tell me off camera, you guys, and then maybe like 3 episodes from now, then I will, mention this great company. Maybe I'll have the owner on since I know you, and we'll do it like
No
that.
doubt. No
So,
doubt.
no, that's no, I got you, I got you. So no, well, okay, since you can't talk about the company, how it, and again, we're doing this for teaching purposes because I can
Sure.
tell people I get royalty, type checks or money that's just coming in from investments that I've done in the past. But how does that work? Is it a monthly check? Is it a quarterly check? Did you invest just time and money? What did you do?
So in the South African environment, what is working out really well is that as a woman in business, there are a lot of opportunities that are directed at women in business. So in this particular business, we are a group of women who came together to give the different skills that we have to make the business work. And also use the fact that we're women to get access to finance. It's a manufacturing business, so to grow, and that needs quite a big capital outlay. So we pulled our profiles as a group in order for us to be able to get access to finance for the manufacturing space and equipment for the business. So yeah, so at the moment, the income is really split over every second quarter. Because most of us are also still reinvesting some of the money back into the business because we're trying to build it. Yeah, so this is a client I met about 3-4 years ago. Worked with her to do the initial PR for the business for the first 18 months. And then after that, I said to her, look, when she couldn't afford it, I said, I love the brand. I love what it stands for. Let's continue. This will be my contribution. Yeah, and we're still there almost 4 years later.
Awesome. I love to hear stories like that, and that will help, other folks, young and those who have been struggling in this field. Because, at least here in America, you can go to school for something and then you find yourself, working at Starbucks. And I know the same thing in Africa because, Cameroon alone has taxi cab drivers, English speaking ones, especially with PhDs, but that's more of governance. And I've seen it also in, South Africa as well. So, to be able to do this field, make a living, then also be able to acquire other businesses, I think it's a real blessing. And we have to be able to share that. My whole platform is to show entrepreneurs how to start, sustain, and succeed in business. And so that's a beautiful thing. Now, with the success that you've had, and I love this homeschool because I can hear the babies. I can hear them back there. They want attention. With all the success that you have had, what is a community give back that you are doing or that you want to do in the future?
So, so one of the things that big things that I like to do is I like to put other people on. So when there are opportunities where I can bring more than just my business in, I definitely am more than happy to share my contacts and connections so that other people can get in. So, like, for example, I don't have a production studio, but I know that, if they're looking for, content that goes beyond what we can produce, definitely always partner on with other people. A lot of companies usually want some element of technology to go with the PR, especially now we've been doing a lot of these virtual events and virtual activations. So I partner with other small businesses that are in technology who can obviously get in through us. And the other way is I run a internship program within the company where we take in a few interns to gain work experience. So the way the PR and communications qualifications are structured here is that people need some work experience in order to pass. So that's usually about 3 to 4 months of actual work and being placed at a company to show that they've got some level of practical knowledge. So I usually take on some interns who will work with us on real campaigns with real clients so that they can get actual work experience.
Awesome. And
Um,
don't forget
yeah,
your
and also the other way I give back is mentoring and making myself available to speak free of charge at events where it's either young people who want to find out about more about PR, or in a space with young women, or just young professionals who want to get a sense of the world of work from kind of like positioning themselves. How do they brand themselves? How do they position themselves on social media in order to be able to attract work opportunities? So those are the three ways I usually give back.
No, awesome. And I know your portfolio talks about your tutoring, the youth, and it's
Mm,
a big thing. I like this
yeah.
show. I have not had maybe one guest who, like, what, giving back. But then we even found a give back that they did. Like, giving back is crucial to winning. If you're not giving back, you're either so greedy or you're just not winning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I also want to, for those who say, I really want to get into PR, I struggle with the money part because it's not just you getting money, it's you being able to pay people. How did you decide like your pay structure for your team? Did you have outside help? Or are you just really good with money? Tell us about it.
Not that great with money. It's a work in progress. Me, I've structured it is I usually work with independent contractors. So I've got a network, and then I've got a couple of permanent support staff. So how that works is that I know that with each project where we have a contract, when I cost it out, I look at obviously all the potential costs that will come with it, some leverage that can go into our savings, so that we have some capital reserves to always pay the support admin staff. But with the others, they're independent contractors who are contracted based on the length of the different projects.
Okay, okay. And so you guys have heard it. She gets a team because money is not necessarily her forte, and they make it work. I almost want to say, could you really kind of like a thirst trap tell an entrepreneur in South Africa, how much your biggest contract has been per month, but then at the same time, I don't want family to come bother you and say, hey, I heard you get this every day, every week. But
No, oh no, I'm not at liberty to say.
yeah, but I will tell you guys, and Nelisa's information, her links will be in the description box. You can look at her Instagram and see that PR has treated her very well. It's gotten her, covers on magazines and different things and posters, flyers. So it's treated very well. If you want to leave the audience with anything, Nelisa, please leave the audience with something, that they can take home?
So I think, part of the PR thing, people think it's PR is one big moment, right? It's setting up these really big moments. If there's anything I would leave people with, is the understanding that every potential connection with your intended audiences is a PR moment. So when you're putting yourself out there on social media, how you interact is a PR moment for you. So with people who are trying to kind of build themselves and position themselves, they just need to be mindful of how they put themselves out there, because that is important. It's laying the foundation for yourself, for your future profile.
No, that is awesome. I thank you for coming on. And for those who are listening who want to reach out, again, her information will be in the description box. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. This is to motivate people to become entrepreneurs, to figure out their purpose.